Hi there friends, and welcome to a new video. If you are new here, hi, my name is Dana and I make videos on art and being an artist. If that sounds like something that you're interested in, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you here. So welcome to episode 2 of the InPractice series. I appreciate all of you for your patience with me in getting this video up. The last few weeks have been a lot busier than I anticipated, but I'm finally moving forward with the series. For today, I will be doing a couple of reference studies focusing on the eyes. I pulled my reference photos from Pinterest, which I have cropped for my purposes. You can find those reference photos on my practice board on Pinterest, which I will have listed in the description. Let's go ahead and get started. So I decided that instead of creating specific assignments for each of these videos, I'll instead just do what feels right for that day, but still ensure that I'm focusing on developing my portrait work. I also want to give you guys a bit of a heads up. I did these pieces over the course of a couple of days, so there will be some changes in lighting, and for that I apologize in advance. I decided to focus on the eyes today because of a project that I want to start working on soon. I thought that it would be beneficial to get a little practice studying different shapes and positions before I begin working on it. It is my intention to add a few more eye studies to this page in the near future, but for today I'll only be working on 2. I thought that I would change things up a bit today and work in gouache, but first I will be sketching out the eyes and giving myself an ink outline to work from. Eyes have always been my favorite part of doing portraits. As an artist and a millennial, I'm sure it comes to no surprise that anime played a huge influence over my artwork, and is how I got started drawing in the first place. I'm particularly fond of the shoujo style, which tends to include really romantic and elaborate eyes. When I was in high school, I really put a lot of emphasis on making the eyes of my characters as captivating and deep as possible, and now that I'm doing actual portraits, I find that they're one of the most important components to capturing your subject. You know, the whole eyes are the windows to the soul thing. When I started the painting process originally, I wanted to keep things as simple as I could while still capturing the details that make the image interesting. When I started off, I thought I was heading in a really nice direction, but I do think that by the end, I had overworked the piece quite a bit. I think this is one of the downfalls of painting as opposed to drawing or inking. Painting, to me, especially in gouache, feels a lot like sculpting, and I tend to hyperfixate a bit too much on perfecting details, and I forget to give the painting time to dry so that I can see what I've actually done. This is a realization that I came to a little more than halfway into this process, so instead of scrapping it, I decided to just follow through and finish the piece. Moving forward, however, I would like to dissect this a bit more and figure out a good way to approach my process so that I can avoid overworking in the future. There's a part of me that wishes I hadn't just jumped straight into this piece without planning a little bit more. When I look at how the shadows and the highlights came out, and when I review my process, I noticed that I had to do a lot of going over sections, a lot of trying to make things darker or lighter, And while I know that that's part of the process on a certain level, especially with blending, I feel like if I had just strategized a little bit beforehand, I could have avoided muddying up some of these sections. I do like the way that it came out overall. I think that I did a good job making the angle and positioning look convincing, but I do feel like there was earlier stages of this piece that were more effective than the end results. And because I'm reviewing my own process, I want to give myself some constructive criticism so that as I move forward and I start working on new pieces, I can think about how I'm approaching things a little bit more strategically instead of just going for it. I believe that there's a time and a place for that, but in general, I'm trying to make my process more efficient, and that means figuring out ways that I can plan ahead so that my results are more consistent with each piece that I make. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys finish watching this process, and I'll be back when we start on the second piece. I do think that there's something to be said for warming up though, because I think that I was able to pull back and be more in alignment with what I was hoping to do once I got to the second image. I have to admit, I was really excited about the color details going into this piece. I'd really like to do more studies of makeup looks because I think they bring such a fun dynamic to a portrait. Looking back on these painting processes, I can say that I need to work on pushing my shadows and highlights a bit more. I feel like I shy away from getting too dark or too light in certain areas, but I know that it would give even more depth and interest to the piece if I did. I think that I mostly fear things becoming a little too muddy or too difficult to correct if I made a mistake, so I chose to be conservative. However, on the next studies that I do, I want to keep that in mind and just push myself a little more. With this piece in particular, I wish that I had given myself permission to be a little more dramatic. I didn't want to overwhelm the image because it's cropped, but if I were to do it again, I would probably extend that blue a lot more and get much deeper and darker with my colors. Another critique that I really have to give myself, having reviewed both of these processes, is that I need to look at my reference photo much more often, especially when I'm working on studies. I have a habit of painting what I think should be there as opposed to what's actually there, and I think that's why I struggle sometimes with capturing my subject much sooner in my process. And again, my ultimate goal is to make my process more efficient. As it stands right now, I tend to get carried away with certain sections or details, and that will sometimes lead to me losing my subject instead of further capturing them. I know that this is a skill that I can build with lots of practice, so I do intend on committing to a lot of sketchbook time in the future, but I do hope that by doing these portrait studies, I'm able to educate myself in a way that I won't need to rely on reference images nearly as much, and I'll be able to work from my imagination much more confidently and with a style that is not only creative, but also educated. In general, I'm pretty pleased with how these studies came out. I do think that I'll be doing more studying in my sketchbook to help me understand the anatomy of the head and eyes a bit more. But I think that this was not only good for practice, but also to help me be more aware of my current skill level and what I need to work on next. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. If you've made it this far, go ahead and drop an eye emoji in the comments and consider giving this video a like if you enjoyed it. Also, just a friendly reminder to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you don't want to miss any future videos from me. I appreciate you all so much, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.